I'm happy to introduce today's moderator, Jeb Ori, co-founder and chief strategy officer at Own to Action. Jeb, over to you.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm really excited to be here. This is going to be a really fun conversation today. We are really honored to have some amazing gentlemen joining us. John Hay, the Senior Vice President of Government Relations at CRH, and Nick Blanchett, a digital communications maestro that is covering so many important things for CRH. But maybe what's helpful, John, I'm sure pretty much everybody is familiar with what CRH does, but they may not know CRH as a brand. Can you kind of talk us through what you guys do and how everyone is using your product, but they may not even know it?
Yeah, I will, Jeb. Thank you so much for having us on today. I'm really excited about being here. I'm joined by my colleague, Nick Blanchett. We're excited to share some of the ideas that we've come up with the last couple of years. I would have to disagree with you, though, Jeb. Most people on the call probably have never heard of CRH. We are, in fact, a global company. We manufacture construction materials and building products globally. Things like asphalt pavement, concrete, cement, concrete block. You might be familiar with our products if you go to a Lowe's or a Home Depot. Go out back and find the gray block or the concrete block or the bagged stone. Those are our products. We manufacture those globally. About half our business is here in the United States. We have about 40,000 employees across the U.S. in North America in almost all states. We operate in 47 states around the country. We operate through local brand names. Our local operating companies might be the Shelley Company in Ohio or Pike Industries up in New Hampshire and Maine. Might be Texas Materials in Texas. So we operate through local operating companies. And I think you'll see that theme throughout our presentation today, Jeb, as we describe how we engage our employees through this more decentralized model of our government relations program.
I know it's incredibly powerful. Nick, let us know a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So Nick Blanchett, it's nice. Thanks for having me on the call today. Been with CRH here for coming on 4 or 5 years or so. As John kind of mentioned, I handle a lot of the digital marketing communications and really getting the good work that our government relations team is doing and getting that in front of our employees across the country and across the globe there. So excited to be with you all today.
That's great. So maybe let's get to know some of the people on the call before we jump into the impact report and how you built it and what your government relations team does. So Sherry, I know we can activate a couple of questions. Please encourage everyone to answer these because it's going to help us give some context into who we're talking to. And, so the first question that you're going to see on the poll is, what is the size of your government affairs or government relations team? Let us know. Go ahead and answer that right now. And once you answer it, you'll get to see kind of the responses collectively. So we'll give everyone a couple seconds. And Sherry, let me know when a good time to move on is, and we'll go to the next question. Go ahead and click through, answer that. It's going to help us. And what are we seeing right now?
It looks like about half of our attendees are falling in the 6 to 10 range, with another quarter in the 2 to 5. So it's making up most of the folks. I'm going to move on to the next one.
John, how would you characterize the size of the CRH government affairs team?
Well, our team is we're in the 2 to 5 range. Nick and I are half the team, half our government relations team, but because of our more decentralized model, we leverage a large number of our employees across our company. We had a call last week, for example, with what we call our government relations cabinet, made up of executives and professionals, mid-level managers, and people, frankly, just interested in politics. We have over 100 names on that cabinet list. So we utilize our small team of 4 with a few consultants, manage a team of over 100 is the way I would categorize it. People who are routinely engaged in government relations advocacy.
I love hearing how you're able to connect with so many people throughout the organization to do this. And I know that's going to be a thread that'll come back. Okay, question 2. how effective, and this is for everyone playing at home, how effective would you say your organization is at quantifying the impact of your advocacy programs? Very effective, somewhat effective, not very effective. We need help. Take a minute or a couple seconds. Click through it. And Sherry, let us know what we're starting to see here.
All right, it looks like most people have answered. 3% said very effective job, 44 was somewhat effective, 35 at not very effective, and then the last 17% said they need help. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today. You guys will help them out.
Okay, next question. Do you formally report your team's progress to top executives weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, when we need something, or not at all? And Sherry, let me know when we're seeing some data here.
All right, looks like most people have finished answering the poll. I'm happy to say that no one said that they don't report the answer or they don't report their progress and success. So that's really awesome. 30% said monthly. That's the biggest answer. And then 23% at weekly and 23% at quarterly.
Nick, I saw you kind of chuckling when you thought about this one. How often do you guys report?
You know, honestly, we've tried a few of these different options, the weekly, monthly, quarterly, but what we've really run into is just because, you know, the nature of government relations and all the ebbs and flows that you go through, we really try and tailor our messaging around when things are really happening. And then when things are not so happening, we got to kind of get to dial it back a little bit and focus on more of the larger picture stuff that we're working on. So we don't really want to set ourselves to a specific schedule, because what we found is that you're working to meet those deadlines more than you are working to put together a solid, effective communication out to your employees. So we've played around with a little bit, and what we found works best with us is just kind of working with the flow of our work and how that's kind of creating the content.
And I also can see how, depending if you are involved in state level initiatives or just federal, that also can really drive what your calendar looks like.
Yep, that's right.
Question before we get into into the impact report and the science behind it. Are you hoping to add resources to your team in 2022? New team members, new technology, increasing budget to existing programs. Are you going to grow your PAC? Maybe something else, or no, budgets are flat or going down. So please answer that question, and then we'll put John on the hot seat so you can let us know what it's going to look like for CRH. I keep wanting to say Oldcastle, but I can't do that anymore.
I probably should have explained that, because you know us as Oldcastle too, Jeff.
So Sherry, once we start getting a little bit through, let us know.
Right, looks like maybe we've settled out. So just under a third, about 28% of people said that they're not looking to add resources this year, but those who did say that they are looking to add resources, 44% said new team members, 24% said new technology, 12% increasing budget, and 21% growing their PAC.
Okay, we'll definitely want to come back to the PAC folks, and you'll see there's part of the presentation just for you. So existential question here. What is impact, John? What is impact, and how did you guys decide to package it? What are we about to see? Frame this up for us.
Well, listen, Jeb, I really appreciate you having us on. We're very proud of this impact report that we're going to walk through here. Fairly new for us. We struggled like everybody else over the years with how you quantify this. What metrics do you use? How do you justify your budget? We struggle with it too, and continue to, but this concept This is an annual report, and you'll see the word impact is not we didn't draw that out of thin air. There's a theme that you'll see through our presentation and through this report. You'll see it on the next slide. But we talk about educate and impact and engage, and you'll see that theme throughout what we're doing. So we came up with this concept. I think, Nick, this is our 2020 is our third formal impact report. They've gotten better each year. I attribute this a lot to Nick's expertise in how to manage this report, but it's grown in its comprehensiveness as we've refined what we want to talk about, what we want to highlight, and I think you'll see some of those themes through the report. By the way, this report, again, is annual. We publish this internally to everybody in our company that has an email address. For us, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this went out in the early part of 2021 to over 10,000 of our employees. And we, of course, share it with our trade associations, our consultants, and folks at the state level as well. So we try to share what we're doing with the people that we're trying to engage.
When you conceived of this, I think it was 3 years ago, what were you sitting around with Ryan and Nick and the GR team and say, how can we, like, what is the problem we're trying to solve here? Like, how did the idea of quantifying the impact of the government relations team in a glossy, I guess there may have been a physical one at some point, right? But how did the idea come about? What, do you remember that idea that the journal came from?
I'm going to let Nick weigh in here too, but frankly, we have talked for years about how you quantify this. How do you share what we're doing with again, the people that we want to influence within our company to participate in the process? Number one, how do you quantify that? We've struggled with it for years. And to be honest, I don't remember an aha moment other than a lot of discussion among our team. Nick intimately involved with that discussion, so I might let him weigh in here. But it was really more of thinking through the things we did do, what successes. I guess 2018 was our first report. What successes did we have in 2018 that we would want to share with the people we were trying to engage? And I guess it started there. Nick, anything to add on how this concept came to be?
Yeah, it's we just sat down and thought about how fast kind of the political cycle moves. We'd have one victory, we'd have another one. We'd have things that would just kind of get lost in that cycle. So we wanted to put together a sort of standing doc that we could reflect on, and ultimately use that as a sales tool for our internal team. So we put out a press release on something that happened in January. We put out another one in March, April, and then we sat down and looked at it like, crap, we've got a really good portfolio of success that we had here from the past year. We should really be able to put something together and use this. So that's kind of where the genesis of the impact report sort of came from. And then from there, it was just kind of building out a report that we thought would be most effective for our employees to kind of take in.
Yeah, this breakdown, I see the table of contents, federal, state and local, grassroots, like, are these all items that, I guess, how did you decide what gets its own billing? And then I think everyone's excited to see what's inside of it, but like, how did you come up with how to weight the different things that you want to share out?
Yeah. Let me address that too. And you can see as we go through this, the first couple of pages really talk about a recap of where things are. So we're trying to educate the audience here with what we work on, but it really revolves around the legs of the stool of our advocacy program, which involves grassroots advocacy, which obviously, Jeb, where the phone to action tool comes in a big way. Direct advocacy, and you'll see several different ways that we do that through this report. And then sort of the third leg of that stool in our minds was our political engagement through our PACs. And we have a federal PAC, as I'm sure many on the call do, as well as a number of state PACs in the states where we operate. So it was really built around, number one, wanting to identify the issues that we're involved in or had been involved in the year of the report. and the sort of the three legs of that advocacy stool of grassroots advocacy, direct advocacy, and our PAC program.
Great. So I'm going to jump into it. What are we seeing here, and how do you want to? We'll start thinking about federal, but what are we seeing?
And this is pretty straightforward, and I know every industry and everybody on the call, you have your own set of issues. These are some of ours that we addressed throughout 2020, and as you can imagine from the nature of our business, we're in the construction business. Basically, we supply construction materials and products. So we'll talk about this in a minute, but the single biggest issue we're dealing with at the moment is trying to pass a $1 trillion infrastructure bill on Monday. So we've been quite involved and engaged trying to tee that up, and you can see that theme here. 2020 was an interesting year, obviously, because of COVID. We talked a lot about COVID with our employees and with our stakeholders and with, as you'll see later, the members of Congress and other elected officials that we dealt with. So this, again, was a recap of some things we worked on during 2020. Some of these are successes that we wanted to share with our stakeholders. And you'll see the same thing on the next slide, Jeb. I'm sorry, you want to get into federal?
No, go on.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide, and you'll see the same sort of thing at the state level. Those of you involved in the infrastructure space know well that investing in infrastructure, and most of our business, go back one page, if you would, Jeb, please. Most of our business is publicly funded infrastructure, and so it matters greatly what the Congress is doing, what state legislatures are doing at the state and local level to invest and fund infrastructure, mostly publicly funded infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, et cetera. So that's what this is focused on, to make sure that our stakeholders know that it's not just the Congress, which is where I focus probably most of my time, but it's also those state legislatures, local governments, ballot initiatives we track in a significant way. We get engaged in those efforts at the state level pretty aggressively through our government relations program, and we're just trying to capture what we're doing. You'll see my colleague quoted here, Ryan Lindsay. A lot of what's in this report is his brainchild, and I give him much of the credit for some of these ideas and how we try to package what we're doing in this impact report.
I love that. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
That's one of Ryan's favorite quotes. It's not new. Those of you in the government relations arena have heard it before. So we shamelessly steal great ideas, but you're right. That's exactly what the basis for our program is, Jeb. We want to engage our employees. We want to have an impact on decision makers, and we do that through two basic ways to do that. We want to tell our story, and when we're able to tell our story, we allow our employees to become engaged and to become active. And that's really the basis for our program, is to tell our story and develop relationships in the public policy arena.
So John, I remember when we were kind of going through this, this really jumped out at me, the way that you look at the projects as a way to quantify impact and attach like an economic impact to it. I thought this was really, really smart and forward thinking. Could you give us some color on this and where do you come up with the names?
Well, this is, again, I'll Nick knows this. Nick is smiling because, again, our colleague Ron Lindsay played college basketball, and so we were thinking through these initiatives, and you'll see we've got 2 pages of these in our report. But you see these, everybody knows that that's an Arkansas Razorback. So as we were getting into this issue, this is again an initiative related to raising revenue to invest in infrastructure in the state of Arkansas. It's been an issue in Arkansas for a number of years. We've been our team in Arkansas has been working through their local, their state associations and other initiatives. We sort of captured this. Ryan's thought was everybody knows, these mascots for state universities. So you'll see this theme, but we call our effort a project in Arkansas, where we put together, you can see we identified the problem, created some sort of opportunity. Same thing in Project Jayhawk with Kansas. Our team has been working in Kansas for years trying to trying to increase revenue, trying to increase transportation investment. These are two great successes from last year in both of these states that will significantly impact our business in the states of Kansas and Arkansas. And so we, again, try to quantify that. Everybody's using the same terminology about what it is that we're trying to achieve. And we have just used this concept of a project, and it was kind of fun coming up with the mascots. You'll see it on the next page as well. If you'll jump to the next page again, same thing. We're trying to show our stakeholders what it is we're involved in. You can see there's no magic here. You can see there's geographic diversity in where we are operating, where we're trying to achieve success. This page, for example, the state of New York is much larger within our company than the state of Mississippi, but those dollars that we're trying to achieve really matter for our businesses in those states. And so we want to have an impact in those states. You can see in New York, this wasn't a revenue raising issue. Most of what we do is trying to raise revenue to invest in infrastructure, but that's not what this one was. It was a regulatory issue that we're trying to be involved in to try to resolve to the benefit of our companies. And so our focus is trying to help our companies be more successful on a daily basis, and that's really what our focus is.
Yeah, and if I can jump in real quick.
Go ahead.
You know, John mentioned fun. That's kind of where we try, and especially when we're talking about communicating with our employees. Number one, try and keep it as fun and light as possible. And number two, know your employee base. You know, obviously construction industry, college football, college sports is kind of a big point with our group of guys. So that kind of helped steer us into this Project Bulldog, Project Razorback, Project Jayhawk, etc. sort of tagline. Because, you know, you don't really want to roll out with, instead of say Project Bulldog, it was Project State DOT lottery proceeds in Mississippi. That doesn't really, you know, fly off the tongue there.
Guessing in Michigan, you decided that there are two strong fan bases there, so it'd be hard to call Wolverine or Spartan. So you just stayed away from that.
We'll pick our battles. We're a little bit more, I guess, open to choosing a side in other states. If any of you know our team here in Texas is we're big Baylor Bears fans. So most likely, if we do have a Texas project, it will be the Bears versus the Longhorns or anyone else here. So we try and pick our battles there.
So this actually brings up a question that just came in off the chat. So the question is, how does the GR team interact and coordinate with the marketing and communications team? What's the interaction like? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'm going to let Nick answer this mostly. He interacts with our communications team.
John, I'll take that if you're good.
Yeah, no, please do.
It's starts off, especially with our group, you know, as a lot of you guys know, the GR space can be a little touchy. We really focused working with our communications and marketing team on an educational basis. So we started getting them more familiar with what our government relations team does, the ultimate benefit that we have to the business, and why they need to take this material that we're putting out and the work that we're doing and send that out to the employees broadly. We're very lucky that our communications team has kind of given us the reins to go out and do a lot of these communications separate from them. But I know if a lot of you are working directly with a marketing and communications team, it's to kind of get them in, make them feel like they're part of the process, educate them on just what's going on and how things work, and then work with them to start producing material. So what I've done is I've started holding, I guess, monthly calls with our team to kind of make sure that they're all set, they understand what's going on, and then from there we can start spreading kind of what we're doing.
Is your org structure, are government relations and marketing in the same side of the org?
No. Government relations is totally separate in our structure, Jeb. We have, again, go back to that decentralized structure. We have for a company our size, again, I said we have 40,000 employees in North America. We're fairly decentralized. Our communications team is more done by division, but each of our geographic divisions or product divisions have a small communications or marketing team internal to them that reports through their local structure. So it's really, we try to include as many of that team in these calls that Nick mentioned, for example, in coordinating what the communications are. But the communications that we send out, reviewed, looked at by our communications team, but they come out from the government relations, from us, from the government relations team, directly to our employees.
Got it. Well, let's talk about one of the ways you've gotten people to engage in your grassroots initiatives.
This will come as no great surprise to anyone, but we've been how long have we been a client of yours, Jeb? It's been 5 or 6 or 7 years anyway.
Not long enough.
Yeah, clearly not long enough. And I'm sure. Well, never mind. So here, just a snapshot of how we've utilized, and I'm going to let Nick speak to this in much greater detail. But I want to just highlight one thing. You can see a king's crown there. Our top 10 states. We utilize this tool as a competitive thing among our operating companies. So Nick, why don't you jump in, talk about our program and how we're doing, what we're working on today.
Yeah, obviously our grassroots program has been essential to getting our rank and file employees feel like they get involved kind of in a daily basis in government relations. So it's been an awesome opportunity to get people that typically wouldn't be involved in government affairs, to get them kind of into the system, as I like to say, and kind of have them start participating and making an impact. So, and the one thing that we've really found is helpful, especially to push participation, is, you've seen a lot of gamification stuff, particularly on the marketing side. That's why we do this top 10 states. We really get our operating companies battling out for that top spot. You'll see Michigan and Ohio, probably two of our competitive groups. They go above and beyond trying to get their employees engaged. And it really, it's really been beneficial to kind of get these, because we're so decentralized, get these companies a lot more engaged and kind of reaching out to us to see what they can do to help, versus constantly having to ping them, hey, we need your help here, we need your help here. Now they're like, hey, how are we doing on this? What can we do to boost our numbers here, and contact a representative? So it's been a really great tool for us.
And just one thing to add, you'll notice on that top 10 states list, you see Mississippi at the top of that list. That's a direct result of Project Bulldog. We did a campaign in Mississippi when we were trying to approach the legislature to pass a revenue increase in the state of Mississippi. Mississippi, that's not reflective of the size of Mississippi and our overall structure, but it's a direct result of the specific campaign we had in Mississippi around Project Bulldog.
We've just had a couple questions come in. One is, and we may answer this later, but does the report celebrate accomplishments as well as ask for local engagement of employees? Are these kept separate?
I would answer it this way. I think that we, as Nick said this earlier, but this is intended to not only capture the issue areas we're working on, to capture the successes we've had, but we use it as an internal marketing tool. Here's what we're working on. Here's why we're working on it. We're trying to convey why being involved in the government relations arena is important to your business, and therefore important to each of you as employees. We're trying to convey that message. And you'll see throughout, we're constantly showing pictures, typically of where an elected official came to visit, came to a job site or to a quarry or to some. You saw that opening slide was Senator Jean Shaheen in New Hampshire. She came to a job site during the pandemic. As I recall, she was one of the first in-person visits we had following COVID protocols. You saw the masks and the distancing, but we want our employees to feel like they are a part of our government relations effort, and we try to show them that they are throughout this impact report.
Yeah, so I would certainly say it's more the celebratory side of things, and we use this very celebrating our successes. We use that as a tool to get people more involved. So we kind of stick to that. And we want this to be kind of a standing doc where we can go back years down the road and say, hey, this is what we did 18, 19, 20. These were our successes, and then use those to drive engagement.
And
go ahead, John.
No. Were you going to introduce this slide, Jeb?
one other question I think that we should address now. How do you measure the effectiveness of the government relations work on the business itself?
I think for us, I guess it's somewhat easy to do because as I've alluded to throughout the talk here today, Jeb, we are a company that relies heavily on public funded infrastructure investment. And so places where we can show an increase in investment, those state projects that you saw earlier on the federal recap slide, we were successful along with our industry partners and others in our industry in getting funds added during COVID to state DOT to shore up state DOT revenues. That has a real direct impact on our businesses. And so when we can show success where we were involved in a state, we've had a number of states, and who would have thought that the state of Alabama would have raised its gas tax 10 cents 2 years ago? Conservative state, Republican governor, she signed a 10-cent gas tax increase 2 years ago. So that's a real positive, development that we can point to where our team was involved, our employees that activated, that were involved through the Phone to Action program or other advocacy efforts. That's a direct impact on our business. When state revenue goes up to invest in roads and highways, we're going to benefit from that. It's a pretty direct connection.
I imagine you have some internal calculations that you probably can't share around, if there's $1 billion in funding, depending on the size of your book of business in a given state, what you could expect to see flow through.
Absolutely right. And I certainly can't share that internal information, but you bet. We know what we're, typically in a state when revenue goes up. I think that that Alabama number was that 10-cent gas tax increase was going to raise $350 million additional revenue over 7 years or something. I forget the numbers, but yeah, we're going to get our share of that. And so we know roughly what that's going to be, and we can project into the future, showing a positive increase in our business in those areas.
Great to be able to do that. So can you speak about the Women's Impact Conference and what was it about this event that made this report?
Yeah, this event was one that we're very, very proud of. And I mentioned earlier, one of the legs of our advocacy stool is direct advocacy, direct lobbying efforts. We have been involved in for years in industry fly-ins. Many of you I know on the call have been involved in industry fly-ins into DC, where you bring your executives or other employees from around your companies into DC. You walk the halls of Congress, you meet with members, you have dinners, maybe you do a fundraiser or two or some sort of activity. This event, we were proud of this event. Our industry, construction, it's a fairly conservative industry. A group of women don't typically make the list. We're not the most diverse industry, let's put it that way. And we're trying hard to change that. We brought in a group of 35 executives across our company, various levels in the business, for the first time, focused on women who are involved in our industry and in our business. What we found to me, this visit occurred 1 week before the COVID shutdown, Jeb, and this will lead into the next, I think our next part of our discussion. But this group of CRH executives from around our company came to DC the first week in March of 2020. We did the standard of DC fly-in. We divided into groups. We set up appointments. You can see some of those here in offices like anybody else would do in a fly-in. And so we had a very successful event. You can see the bottom left slide is at the time Congressman Roger Marshall from Kansas. We had a number of our folks from Kansas that were in the group. He gave us that was a nighttime tour of the Capitol. Top left is the outside picture of that visit. Congressman Marshall, somebody that we've gotten to know over the last couple of years, he's now Senator Marshall. So that goes to the relationship building aspect of a lot of what we do. Very successful event, but in this impact report, it was really the only fly-in direct lobbying event we did during the year. So that's why we wanted to highlight this.
So I'd love to go into the NE Engage. There are a couple of questions. I'd like you to speak to this though first, because I think this story is just so exciting, and it showed how quickly CRH was able to pivot once things shut down with COVID and the stay at home. So
Yeah.
although I imagine many of your like employees are essential and we're out working, but if you could just talk to us, what are we seeing here? What's happening on this page?
Yeah, I'll kick this off, and I want Nick to weigh in here too, because he's intimately involved with the details of how we did this e-engage concept. So the impact, the Women's Impact Conference that you saw, Jeb, was the first week in March. COVID shutdown in DC occurred the next week, as all of you will remember. We were all scrambling, trying to understand what was happening. Our businesses all shut down to a large degree. Being in the construction world, though, we were over the next few months deemed an essential business. And so we, for the most part, kept our employees working, obviously following COVID protocols and all those things. We were scrambling like everybody else. So we never totally shut down our operations around our company. But we as a government relations team got to thinking that first week, I'll never forget this, we got to thinking, okay, we're all sitting at home. I'm out on my back porch here trying to figure out how to do my job, how to do our jobs. And our team was talking pretty regularly. And again, I give this to my colleague, Ron Lindsay, initially said, hey, let's see if we can get a member of Congress on the phone with us and tell us what's going on. This was that third week in March. So we came up with the idea way earlier than anybody, certainly in our industry, to think about how we could engage our employees, number one, and number two, stay connected with elected officials. Because the spring, as many of you know, is a time when industries fly to DC. You have conferences and whatnot, and so it usually is a very busy time in Washington, walking the halls of Congress. So we came up with the idea, and certainly not the only ones, but we jumped on this very quickly. We had our first Zoom call with a member of Congress on, I'll never forget, it was April the 1st. So 2 weeks after the shutdown, we had our first Zoom call. It was with Rodney Davis from Illinois, who we've gotten to know well. It was April Fool's Day, April 1st, and we weren't sure how it was going to go. There were about a half a dozen of us on the call. Mr. Davis was on his iPhone in his backyard trying to get coverage. It was awkward, to say the least, but successful. He told Ryan later what a great idea that was. He's happy to jump on calls with us, and that led to us coming up with this thought of having a series of calls. Again, not just to stay engaged with a member of Congress or other elected officials, but with our employees. We wanted our employees to remain connected to our program with their local elected official as we were all trying to navigate this pandemic, trying to stay working, trying to ensure that we were going to survive. And who we didn't know. Nobody knew really. So over the next 3 or 4 months, I guess our program, Nick, really extended through roughly July. We did over 120 Zoom calls with elected officials. Here are some examples of these. They were all over the political spectrum, House and Senate, state legislators. We had a few calls with state DOT directors. We had a few calls with candidates throughout this process. And really successful over time. And what we found, Jeb, as we refined how we did this, we were able to ensure the elected official we were trying to meet with that the call would be 30 minutes, no more. We had it scripted. We engaged our employees. You see the pictures of our employees on the call. We had this set up so that it was our employees, their constituents, who were asking the questions. It wasn't the GR team. Somebody from our GR team kind of emceed the call. But once we kicked it over to our employees, the local plant manager might describe his business and talk about our presence in the district. The questions would be asked by the employees, the constituents on the call. And so we got it down to a system where it was very efficient. Nick would be very engaged dealing with the schedulers on the technical side. The members of Congress knew what the questions were going to be. Our employees knew what the questions were going to be. So we ended up having really great calls with a dialogue with these members of Congress. They obviously wanted to know how we were keeping our employees safe through this COVID, through the pandemic, and we were happy to share what we were doing in that arena. And we had an ask. We want to remain essential. We have concerns about how revenues flow into state DOTs and those sort of things. So we had a really wonderful dialogue. You can see Nick did a great job of capturing the smiles on the faces of these members as we did this. And this is a great representation. Every one of these calls was successful. We had very few technical glitches, and we tried to take advantage of the technology available to us at the time.
So,
Yeah. And Jeb, I saw that question about keeping stakeholders motivated for the longer term. This is really kind of morphed into keeping our guys connected and engaged, even in times where we're not really focusing on a specific infrastructure bill. It's our way, and we've continued to do this even through even last week. We've had some engaged calls. It's been a great way to get our employees still feel like they're connected to what's going on, even in times where things might be a little bit slower on the legislative side. It's super easy to do. They just jump on a quick Zoom call. It's 30 minutes max. It's been a great tool to keep our guys, our stakeholders, up to speed and engaged.
So we have another question that asks, how do you measure and quantify avoided costs from defeating legislation or significant amendment? So when there's a win and there's a dollar value attached to a construction project, but there's also things that may not be positive for the business. Like the mining bill comes to mind. I saw that in New York. But I mean, like, how do you think about that? How would you quantify that kind of impact?
Let me give you an example. That's more challenging to quantify, obviously, avoidance, which is what we do. And I know most people on this call do the same thing. We would give you one example, recent example. This was a success we had this past year. It was a permitting issue. We're in the aggregates business. We had a dredging permit on the Mississippi River or the Missouri River, can't remember, but we had a permit that was expiring. And so, we were able to quantify what would happen if those permits were not reissued. And it was challenging in COVID because you didn't have a lot of folks in the regulatory agencies available to work on our permits, and we had a lot of questions around that. So we were able, in that case, we ultimately were successful. The permits were issued, but we were able to clearly quantify what would happen in that particular case if our permits were not issued and we were not able to dredge, and a significant portion of that company's business would simply go away because the supply material wasn't there. So that sort of thing is fairly easy to quantify. Others are much more challenging, but we do have some examples of how we can quantify those types of either avoidance or regulatory matters that would impact us. But that is more challenging, obviously.
Yeah, and it's a lot more challenging, especially when we're talking, blasting this out more to your rank and file employees, not necessarily the executive team. So what we've tried to do is kind of go light on the details. We've really focused around, call it playing defense, right? It is really where we've kind of tried to quantify this. More or less just, hey, like, we had this bill, we defeated it, keep it super high level, super simple, but still make sure that we blast that information out as broadly as we can.
Do you want to speak about the PAC and what it means to CRH? And I'm really interested in this comparative set too, when you compare against some of the other, your peers.
Again, just I mentioned earlier the PAC, our PACs, and we have a federal PAC and 5 state PACs, but our PACs are a part of our advocacy program, not the end all and be all, but it is a key component of what we're doing. I chuckled at one of those earlier questions that Sherry sent around about do you plan to increase the size of your PAC? Well, the answer is yes, all the time. We are constantly thinking about how to grow our PACs and the influence that they have, and you can see. Again, this is all this is public information, but we have the largest PAC in our industry among our corporate peers who have PACs, and we're proud of that. We're proud to talk about it and to talk about it within the industry. We have the largest PAC in our industry. That's really small by corporate PAC standards or the size of PACs generally, but in our industry, we're a significant player, and we're very proud of doing that. And I can't recall, Jeb, but maybe the next slide is that state PACs. I can't remember if we put a slide in there about our state PACs. But the same thing on the state PAC side. We are involved in 5 states now with state PACs, and states where we need to have a PAC. We don't always, but we do the same thing there. We engage locally with our local employees to contribute to the state PACs, and we use those very effectively in the 5 states where we operate state PACs to supplement what we're doing on the advocacy front around our business.
What advice would you give to people that are interested in growing their PAC? Have you found any kind of, and maybe to reframe that, like, have you seen the value of the advocacy and the engagement and all the Zoom, like all the different work you're doing that gives employees a chance to engage? Do you see that like benefiting the people's interest in participating politically? I know that these are separate, it's church and state, but I mean, do you start to see like you're building this cadence of engagement that helps kind of ultimately lead to PAC growth?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think if you look at that engage slide that you showed earlier, 1,500 of our employees were touched in these calls with their members, with their elected officials. Again, not all members of Congress. Some were state legislators and other elected officials, but they see the value of engaging directly with those elected officials, and we have found that has translated. Now, again, COVID's been challenging, but we've been able through COVID to maintain contributions to our PAC, and we certainly think that our effort to engage our employees across the board, while these Zoom calls that you saw, those weren't political meetings. Those weren't PAC fundraisers. Those were open to the employees in our businesses. We talked about issues that were important to the member, important to our employees. Those weren't political events. Those were official events where we talked about issues of the day that impacted our business, of importance to the member, whether it was safety on the work site with COVID or the needs of the state DOT in that state or whatever. So, but yes, I think there's a direct correlation to the continued engagement of our employees and the work that we've been able to do the last couple of years. And one other thing I'd like to say, somebody asked about growing your PAC. We have grown our PAC over the years. I have found over time that there are two things are most important there. Number one is senior executive buy-in, top-down leadership in the PAC. No questions about whether you should have a PAC, but the ability of your leadership to move forward to solicit the eligible class to give to your PAC. And number two, I'd rather have $10 contribution from 10 people than $100 contribution from one person. So we have emphasized participation in the PAC. We have not emphasized in any way the dollar amounts that people give. We want people to participate in our PAC at whatever level they're comfortable with. And I think that's been a key to our success.
John, we have another question that asks about how do you think about diversity on the government relations team?
Diversity in what way? Are you talking about the team itself?
About the value of diversity. I'm thinking.
Yeah, to us, hugely important to have a diverse team, whether it's your direct employees, whether it's the consultants you use, whether it's this cabinet that we have is a diverse group of individuals from all sides of the political spectrum. There are a lot of ways to look at diversity, but we want to have a diverse range of viewpoints in deciding how we move forward with our government relations effort. Try to engage. We try to remain as nonpartisan as we can across the political spectrum. What's important to us are the issues that impact our business, impact our ability to keep people employed in our company. And those are the things that we focus on, try to set aside political differences, because what matters to us is what matters to our businesses.
we have time for one
And
more question.
if I can jump in, Jeff, real quick, it's particularly in our Women's Impact Conference, that sort of diversity initiative was really mirrored what our corporate entity CRH was doing at the global level, trying to push some of these diversity values. So really, honestly, we made a deliberate measure to try and parallel them in what they were doing. So definitely kind of feed and build off whatever your corporate entity is trying to accomplish in the diversity front. It was key to our success there.
Okay, I think the final question we have time for is how often do you join with competitors in your industry, peers maybe, in terms of advocating for specific policies?
Yeah, I would have to answer it very often. We are part of our advocacy program involves active engagement in our trade associations. We're members of all of our associations. And those of you on the call who might be familiar with our industry, we have a wide variety of trade associations that we're involved in at both the federal and state level. So we join primarily through our associations and the membership of those associations in advocating for the issues of common interest. In fact, we're involved very active right now. I mentioned the infrastructure bill that may be on the floor of the House on Monday. We have a coordinated across the industry effort to try to support the passage of that legislation. But we do join with our industry partners and colleagues. I'm in regular communication with my counterparts in other companies in our industry, sharing ideas about how best to implement your advocacy program, how best to implement your grassroots program, things like that. So we're in regular contact with our colleagues across the industry.
Well, John, thank you so much, Nick. From when we first started working together, I think it was about 5 years ago. One thing that's always stood out with Oldcastle, now CRH, is how forward you have been with thinking about how to leverage technology across your business. And I think that this, I wanted to end on this slide because I think it really encapsulates what you do so well. You move quickly, you pivot, and you find a way to make engaging in policy really meaningful for your employees, which I think is the core to any good employee engagement program, period. And I know that your CEO, Randy Lake, will send out updates and text message videos to everybody, that kind of regular connection, and also the Zoom calls clearly are very effective in keeping connectivity, which has been challenging for any company that's distributed, or any company that used to also have an office, as things have been kind of tough through COVID. So I just wanted to recognize how impressive the work that you do is, and how the incorporation of digital from advocacy to moving on Zoom calls and figuring it out to everything else you're doing that we didn't get a chance to cover in today's conversation is truly amazing. So thank you very much for your time and for your participation here. It's really been wonderful to get to speak with both of you. I have this great memory. I remember going to the 930 Club with Ryan. I think Pat Green was playing, and there may have been some Congress people there, enjoying the Texas music. But I think that part of that is just understanding how to create new opportunities for people to connect that are a lot of fun. So.
Well, Jeb, thank you for having us. Nick and I really appreciate the opportunity to share our ideas. If we can give others on the call ideas to do things, we're just happy to share that. And I just want to say on a personal note how much I've enjoyed and appreciate the relationship you and I've had over the years as we've grown in figuring out ways to utilize the wonderful tool that you have in Phone to Action. And we continue to find new ways to use it, and we will continue to do so. So thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Well, good luck on Monday, and let's get a bipartisan bill passed.
We're for it. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Great
Thanks,
day.
everybody. Bye.